day of the Gazette onwards, all the regional plantation companies have been paying their gazetted rupees 1000 basic plus 150.
So isn't the plantation sector making profits?
Yes, there is an element of truth in that. This year and the last year we did make profits.
Thondamans being your biggest issue, from senior Thondaman to Arugaman Thondaman to now Jeevan Thondaman, they seem to be confronting the plantation sector a lot.
Well, I don't know what the agenda is.
Do plantation companies regret this whole privatization?
That's a very loaded question.
Hello and welcome to another episode of On Fire here on Daily Mirror Online. I'm Easwaran Rutnam. The plantation sector continues to be in the spotlight, with the wage issue being highlighted by politicians and trade unions. The sector is also facing issues as a result of the economic crisis. So joining me on the program today to discuss the issues faced by the plantation sector and of course respond to some of the allegations being raised by politicians is Mr. Roshan Rajadurai,
Yes.
the spokesperson of the Planters Association. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So what is the status now of the plantation sector as a result of the issues that the country is facing with the economy?
Right. You touched on the wage issue. Let me put that to rest. We were in a collective agreement with the unions ever since privatization. But in 2021, unions went away from while we were in a collective agreement, they opted for a mechanism that we came under the wages board. And we all are aware that they gazetted it, and from that day onwards, from the day of the gazette onwards, all the regional plantation companies have been paying their gazetted rupees 1000 basic plus 150 EPF plus all the traditional and usual benefits. So there is no issue. I don't know why the politicians and other interested parties keep on dragging this up, because absolutely there's no issue, there's no place where we are not paying if they did the full day's work and fulfill the obligations in terms of tasks and norms. And in fact, we have told the Labour Minister also, if such a case is there, please take action. So I don't
So the
think
1000 rupees is being paid
it's being
now.
paid, and it's on record. I mean, we are PLCs, we are responsible corporates, and it's on record in our books of records.
But you all are not happy. You all didn't want to pay this 1000 rupees.
Well,
You all
that is
proposed a
also
different model.
Sorry, that's another misconception and false narrative by I don't know whom, because from the outset we gave a proposal that was in fact better than what was imposed on us by the wages board, with attendance incentive, with incentives for good productive people. But for whatever reasons that they thought of, they didn't want that. In fact, we offered 1000 rupees way below before this negotiation started. So eventually, unfortunately, I think it ended up in the wages board, and now we are quite happy to be in the wages board, because the collective agreement to a large extent was one-sided. While the corporates had to fulfill all the obligations and statutory duties, we didn't get the corresponding response from the other side.
But of course, this 1000 rupees was proposed before we faced all these economic issues, and now we see these politicians representing the plantation sector coming out and saying 1000 is not enough, now you need to go beyond that.
Of course, I concede that 1000 is not enough on current day's costs, but we had to take the reality of the business. Now, if you look at the wages board of Sri Lanka, plantation sector is paying the highest daily wage, even higher than the much wanted garment sector. And up to now, to my knowledge, I haven't seen anything that any indication that the other wages boards, which are far below that of the plantation sector, has increased even up to 1000. And apart from the 1000, this is the only 1000 rupees that they talk of. We have a lot of non-wage, non-cash benefits. And when you factor all that, it costs about 1800 rupees for us per day when a worker reports for work.
So isn't the plantation sector making profits? I mean, this is again another allegation that, the plantation sector is making the words they use sometimes is huge profits, and that they can pay more to the estate workers.
Yes, there is an element of truth in that. This year and the last year we did make profits, but they have to not forget that up to about 2018 we were making enormous losses. So all these profits that we earned now are going back to pay the bank loans and other commitments. And we are always in agreement to increase their earnings, not in this traditional 150-year-old archaic, very unproductive, inefficient system of daily wage. So we have repeatedly told them we are willing to consider a new model that suits this age and time, called the revenue share model, where the workers are guaranteed a certain percentage of the price that we get at the auctions. In fact, we have been consistent in our approach and our offer for the last 10 years about this RSM model. We call it revenue share model. The nomenclature may change, some will say contract outgrow model, but the working is the same. Look at the smallholder sector of Sri Lanka today. We have only 100,000 workers in our plantation sector, registered workers. Smallholders have 450,000 operators in the fields, and they are paid on a productivity base. And if we, for argument's sake, now they are paid about 40 rupees per kilo. If they are plucking the norm that the RPC people are plucking 20 kilos, they will earn only 800 rupees. But it is not the case, because it's a more sort of entrepreneurial, self-managed work. They go and pluck 30 kilos, 35 kilos and earn 1,200, 1,500 rupees. So we are proposing to move away from this inefficient, archaic system and get into a model where the workers are self-managed and flexi-time work, and that is already happening in the estates. About 30 to 40% of our crop comes that way. Now we cannot hark back to 150 years when the plantation started, the conditions where the manager had absolute and monopolistic control over the terms of conditions of work. It is no longer the same. In fact, we are 50 years down the line after privatization, after nationalization. So we need to change our model.
Where is the obstruction, where is the block in your attempt to get this revenue share model moving forward?
Okay, I think we have offered this to the unions that are representing the workers and to the state that has some kind of a stakeholder in that. But for some reason, we have not been able to get their willing consent. So on our own, most of the plantation companies have started this model for the reason that when we privatized, we had 372,000 odd workers, which was far in excess to the requirement anyway. But now today in 2022, I believe we have about 100,000 registered workers. Imagine doing the work of 372,000 workers with less than one third. So we have evolved, we have innovated, we have sort of fashioned systems where the industry continues, and also the operators, like the workers involved in the industry, also will have a mutual benefit. Now we have cases I showed about 2 years back where the workers earned 70,000-80,000 rupees on this revenue share model, but for some reason there was massive pushback and they were like discouraged. But now, of course, at a lower scale, people are earning 40,000-50,000 in doing revenue share model work.
You're also from a plantation company, a big company at that. I mean, do you all, looking at all the issues that you've been facing over the last few years, do plantation companies regret this whole privatization?
That's a very loaded question. Let me hark back to the pre-privatization. I don't know whether many people in Sri Lanka know, at the time of privatization, the plantation sector was incurring a loss of almost 1.52 billion at that time, and the treasury was subsidizing rupees 5 billion every year. So that was equal to the total food import bill of the country. So at that time, because of the politics involved, because it was nationalized and too much of politics, none of the big corporates were willing to take. But I was not there. I was told that it was Mr. D.S. Jayasundara, the ex-chairman of Haley's, who convinced the other like-minded corporate giants to support the government in its endeavor to take over and manage the estates. So initially, it was not gung-ho, like people were more or less coerced to manage, and of course down the line we had to buy the companies. There was a misconception that it was given free. Actually, every year a company like a company that I represent, we pay about 80 million rupees as lease rental to the government. So it's a net asset value of the asset we have divided over 50 years. That's what we call lease rental. So basically we have not got anything free. In fact, we took over an industry that was been subsidized, and ever since then we have taken that huge burden of the government, and we manage our industry with our own funds.
Have the Thondamans being your biggest issue, from senior Thondaman to Arugaman Thondaman to now Jeevan Thondaman, they seem to be confronting the plantation sector a lot?
Well, I don't know what the agenda is. I was in planting when Mr. Saumya Murthy Thondaman was there. Of course, he had some sort of feel and sense of the industry, and he didn't allow it to sort of break. Certainly he did bend it, but he didn't break it. And down the line, the unions and our unfortunate situation is the trade union is also a political party. The political party is also trade union. I suppose this is something unique, and that creates a lot of tension, lot of issues, because when we go to talk to them, we are talking to politicians, not trade unions, and they have politics at the back of their head, and everything that they probably they look at the votes. I don't know. I cannot comment on the outlook.
Who looks after the conditions of the workers? I mean, when you go through these houses that they live in, the line houses, the conditions, poor conditions at that, is that something that comes under the purview of the company?
I think that's a very good question that you asked me. I was in the JDB before we privatized. During that time, the estate had sort of ownership of the houses. It was a precondition at the time of privatization that we let go of the houses and the gardens that they were cultivating at that time to an organization called at that time Plantation Housing and Development. Always that ministry was headed by a plantation sector politicians, Mr. Senior Thondaman, then Mr. Arumugam Thondaman, and over time Mr. Digambaram, Mr. Jeevan Thondaman. So they have taken over the helm of running that organization, and they are responsible now for the housing. But I must say that during the JDB time, the housing, because it was a responsibility of the management, if they want to do any additions, improvements, there was a protocol. They used to get permission, and we used to send our welfare staff, and there was some order, some sort of method in the madness. But ever since 1992, the houses, I mean, basically it's their house, we can't even enter. So if you drive up, you can see many poorly constructed houses out of tar sheets, out of wood. So it's beyond our control, and what people see is those houses. But don't forget that we have built 60,000 cottages during this time, ever since privatization, and water and sanitation, all that is done with the help of the government and this PHDT and the plantation companies and other aid agencies.
But the cottages are for
workers,
tourists, for workers.
Workers, yes.
Okay.
Workers have got cottages because we have only 100,000 workers now. So if you are an unworker, you would definitely not be entitled to all the benefits that a worker would enjoy. So if there is a upgrading of a row of houses, of course the management, we would give preference, and we are required to give preference to the people who work and contribute to the industry.
But then these line houses fall within separate plantation companies,
no,
right? They
line houses are in our plantation company, but the management of those is individual because we have let go on of that line houses and the gardens, and we have built almost 24,000 new houses, total 60,000 cottages. There's a self-help scheme. So no longer do we build houses, but we build cottages, self-help and individual cottages, and also we have upgraded over the time 110,000 old line roads, because this is a legacy that we had, a carryover from the British era, and you can understand that overnight we can't build so many houses. We don't have the capacity. So a lot of non-governmental and other international organizations have helped us to upgrade the housing stock.
The fertilizer issue was,
Yes.
of course, something that a lot of people suffered as a result, including, most importantly, I guess, the plantation sector. How bad an impact was that, and how are you all recovering from
It's a
that?
significant impact, because tea in Sri Lanka is a year-round crop. It's a perennial crop, and most important, it's a vegetative crop. If it is coconut, you can delay. If it is rubber, you can wait without tapping. But because tea is a vegetative crop that needs harvesting every 5 to 6 days, and the quality and the tenderness of the leaf is critical to Ceylon tea, and that's the only and unique selling point in the global markets. So it had a significant effect, and from the outset we told everyone in authority and in power that this is a bad move, because we predicted about 25% yield drop in the first year, and if you don't rectify it, then it is going to get worse.
So the authorities had discussions with y'all, and yet they turned a
Well,
blind.
they didn't have discussions per se. I mean, they just put a blanket ban. Thereafter, through media, through different forums, we sort of approached them. We conveyed our sort of anxiety about, and we conveyed how we felt about it. But unfortunately, not only fertilizer. You forget that weedicides was banned, fungicides was banned, and all the other agro inputs were banned. So commercial planting you cannot do without the aid of these things. Maybe if you have a small home garden you can manage, but even the smallholders whose average plot is only 60 perches, even they were hard hit because of the lack of fertilizer and weedicides. When you don't have weedicides, TR has confirmed that at least 20-25% yield drop is there, because the weeds will compete with the plants and take up the nutrients available. So we don't have fertilizer, then whatever nutrients in the soil is taken up by the weeds. And more than anything, when there are weeds, there are leeches and other small insects. They form a sort of impediment to workers, because workers don't like to work. So it is not safe and it's not conducive for workers to come and work. Then they keep off work, and that impacts on the earnings and impacts on the quality of life. So it's not one-off thing, it's a cycle. So I'm really sorry that the people in authority didn't consult the stakeholders or get their buy-in or get their views before they did this very hasty and unscientific and illogical ban.
Numbers wise, could you say like what the loss was like as a
We
result
lost about 25% of our crop, probably about 50 million. Figures are not done. Probably would have lost about 40 to 50 million kilos of tea last year, and when we are selling at $4, so it's something that we had it in our hand and then lost it unnecessarily.
So you could have brought in the revenue, the dollars that the government
country
needed.
And what is unique in the tea industry or the plantation industry, particularly tea, 95% of every rupee that you earn comes back to the country, because we only pay out for fertilizer and probably some chemicals. Otherwise, everything again gets distributed within the country and its people.
But now that the ban has been relaxed, are you all able to bring down the fertilizers?
Yes, but there is a cost factor. Cost has gone up as much as by 10 times. So we have to, justify financially and economically that application of fertilizer has its benefits, and definitely there's a reduction and slowdown of fertilizer application vis-a-vis a pre-ban time.
So how has the economic crisis affected your operations?
Well, I must say that we were one industry that even during the COVID, we ensured that the industry continued without a break, except for the 3 days that was compulsory. So we ensured that because of the communal living setup, we ensured that people were given all the protocols related to the COVID.
And there was an allegation that they were not being vaccinated at that time, that they were not being protected.
I think somebody is overactive imagination, because we have 100% vaccination for 3 doses. I don't think any other industry can claim, because our management at estate managers, staff, with the help of government, PHDT, there's more or less, how shall I say, coerce the workers. We organize the doctors to come to the estate and organize these things, and they are vaccinated. And that is the reason why for about a year we didn't have COVID related deaths on our estates. We did all the protocols. We ensured that food was given to the workers to their doorstep, because otherwise they congregate in bazaars. And because of the tight communal close living, we didn't have a pandemic as such. During the economic crisis, a lot of people came back to the estate, people who lost their jobs in Colombo in constructions, hotels, and even at that time we accommodated them in the estates, provided all the amenities and facilities, and opened out our plantation industry so that they also can come and earn. Now we have a lot of innovative practices like revenue share model and other things, so that the people who are not regular workers can earn something during their stay in the estate.
Have you seen a drop in the number of workers in the recent times as well? You said the people are coming back, but have also people started moving out into other areas?
Yes, of course, that's a fact. Outmigration is irreversible. That's a fact that we have reconciled ourselves to, and that is the reason that we are introducing innovative working models like the revenue share model, where the workers do not have to be registered workers, but they can work on their own time, self-managed, entrepreneurial, sort of a proprietorship. Anyway, the land is owned by the government, and neither the company nor the worker can own it, but we assign a block adequate for them to pluck 1 week, and they on their own time we'll go and pluck and harvest the leaf and we pay something. Actually, this is not something new. As a young assistant manager, I can recall when I was working at Dagawis Estate, the workers who had no commitments with children, they used to go to the field at about 6:30 early morning before the sun comes up and pluck at one stretch, and they used to pluck about 40 kilos by 2 o'clock. So, for the name you were required to submit 20 and other 20 is extra pay, and unfortunately some more of the other stakeholders intervened and stopped, and we had to put them in a row. So, you know, when you put large gangs of 50 and 60 people, the output, the speed and the efficiency of the best plucker is limited by the efficiency of the slowest plucker. So, that is that peer pressure and group thing. So, I believe in going forward, there is no other way other than to sort of break the shackles of this 150-year-old work model, because all over the world is taking place in every agriculture industry, and allow them to pluck and earn more and give the opportunity, provide a platform for them to earn more.
The government recently said that there is some unutilized land in the plantation sector which they are going to acquire and make more.
Well, in the first instance, government owns 80% of the land in Sri Lanka. So many thousands of hectares of uncultivated, underused, unutilized land is available. But as for the plantation sector, thanks to the Britishers and those who ran the plantations before us, every available cultivable extent is in cultivation, every available. But when you come to estate, you see areas are these slab rock, not suitable for agriculture, steep areas, earth slip prone areas, river banks, reservations. So, there are areas like this are in our estates. Those are uncultivated, but they are not cultivable.
So, it looks like not just trade unions, but even the government, who can make better use of the plantation sector, is also taking you on.
I really don't know the logic of that, because they have forgotten the original situation when they handed over the estates. The industry was being subsidized, but ever since then we have taken that load, the burden of the government, and as a result they were able to concentrate more on the smallholder sector with good results, because they increased their land holding by 3 times in 30 years, and they now provide 75% of the national crop. So, that's a good thing, while we manage our own estates with our own funds and own management.
But it looks like they are setting the stage to try and take back this. It's like they want to manage the land.
So, anyway, government is managing state plantations, JDB and SPC. So, why don't they manage that better, manage it and show that as a model? Why do they want to get something that is being managed well, doing well? Why?
Yeah. How do you see the plantation sector going in the next maybe year or 2 even?
Sri Lankan plantation sector is perhaps very unique, because I've been in the sector for 40 years. Our productivity, individual plucker productivity, is the lowest in the world. Like they are plucking at about 18 to 20 kilos per day average, whereas our neighbor India in Assam, they are plucking 34 kilos for them to qualify to get a name, and in Kenya it's about 60 kilos. So, the output is very high, and as a consequence of low output, for many reasons that I told you now, then our land productivity is low. So, this puts a huge pressure on cost. So, our cost of production is highest in the world. So, when you go to the world market, tea is a very common commodity. It's a commodity now. We can't compete with countries like Kenya. They are willing to sell tea at $2 and good tea at that. So, this is the challenge that this industry has to face, and we are fast losing our markets for many reasons, not because of quality issue, because of other reasons. We still have a premium on quality. You know that over the last 10 years, our price is the highest in the world. Whatever people say, price is an indicator of quality. People don't pay high price if the quality is not there. So, we are orthodox manufacturing quality and premium teas leaders in the world. I think that position we can hold on, provided we change the work model, because if the workers out-migrate from the industry, then we won't be able to pluck the plucking grounds, and the leaf will not be of a better quality, and the quality of tea will deteriorate. So, I think all this has to lock in together with on the ground. People must have a better life, they must have a better quality of life and higher capacity to earn, and that will in turn help the quality and productivity of the industry.
There are concerns that a global recession in the early stages of 2023 would hit a lot of industries in Sri Lanka, and do you see that happening with the plantation sector as well, with your exports?
Whatever happens in the globe has a significant effect on our industry, but we are hopeful that within Sri Lanka we can sustain and provide the livelihoods and employment to the people as we have been doing even in the worst of COVID pandemic and economic crisis. We didn't have a breakdown. We somehow or other managed. We didn't have fuel, we didn't have fertilizer, we didn't have fuel to run our factories, to transport our teas to Colombo, to bring the firewood to the estates. But in spite of all that, we managed the plantations well. I think we have 150 years of practice in dealing with crises, and all credit to the workers and the staff and the management on the ground for keeping the industry moving forward.
How will, there's a lot of talk about this electricity tariff. What sort of impact would that have on your industry?
Fairly significant, because Sri Lanka being a tropical country, a lot of rainfall, high humidity, so we need to wither, that is to take the moisture from the wet leaf. So we use a lot of electricity in our factories. It is going to have a significant impact on the cost of production, as much as cost of fuel going up did for us. Because with the cost of fuel going up, our transport of teas, bringing in the raw materials, fertilizer, firewood, everything has gone up by threefold.
So is that being reflected in
on our cost? Yes,
as well?
Our cost of production is close to 1,000 rupees on average, and the price is about 1,050, 1,060. So the gap is very small, and also that is very misleading this year, because most of the estates we could not fertilize because the lack of fertilizer, and when you put the fertilizer, that will cost about 200 rupees on the cost of production. So we are hoping that fertilizer price will come down and the crop will increase to absorb that enhanced cost.
Right, so we'll have to leave it at that since we're running out of time. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you.
So that's all the time we have for you for On Fire for this week. Till next time, stay safe.